Hello everybody and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's Gaming Friday. I'm Gary.
And I'm Geoff.
And today we are very excited to sit down and talk about XCOM 2. Yeah. Or rather, I know my PC friend here, Geoff, is more excited to talk about it, whereas me, who's on the console, has yet to get my hands actually on the game. So, Geoff, without further ado, how is it?
It's fucking awesome, Gary. It's fucking awesome. It's so good.
Have you slept in the last 4 or 5 days, Geoff, that this game's been out?
Yeah, I have slept, but I have played, well, for the first 3 days I played on average about 11 hours a day.
Wow.
You've taken time off
work, you've taken time out of your social life.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got to save the world from the aliens.
Everyone and everything. I've got to save the world. Yeah, right. So, yeah, this is XCOM. For those who don't know about XCOM is a game that's began in 1994, and it's a tactical turn-based tactical turn-based strategy game. Yeah. Where you there's multiple sort of elements to the strategy. There's kind of overarching you've got to save the world plot, and then there's in each of that there's missions in which you actually micromanage a team, and you gotta kill aliens basically. That's all you gotta do, take them out. But yeah, so XCOM, this is XCOM 2, the much lauded sequel to the reboot, which was the original game was in 1994, and there's been many moons. It was nearly it was 18 years until the reboot came along. Well,
there were many failed attempts to recapture the essence of XCOM over the years, and of course the XCOM license did go to
there's you, Gary.
Oh wait, it's my character. Well, I think he's got a better looking beard than mine, but he's got a little bit more hair than me, and he's a little bit more. That's not me, Geoff.
It's an idealized.
It's an idealized me. You've got the wolf tattoo on the side, which is kind of 5 times bigger than mine. It makes me look like a pussy now.
That's me. There's me looking like a badass psyop.
Cool.
Although
you look like you've just stepped out of a Call of Duty game.
Yeah, I'm not actually a PSY operative in my game. I'm still only playing my first playthrough. So, and there's Jess.
I think Jess is currently. He would have joined us today, but I think he's currently suffering fatigue from also playing excessive amounts of XCOM 2.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. He's been up up till ridiculous hours of the morning. I work nights. And I come home to Jess still being awake playing XCOM, so there you go.
Okay, so as I was saying, the license for XCOM did bounce around a little while, and I think it was Activision that eventually picked up the license and made the, rebranded XCOM, and there was fears at one point that it wasn't going to be the tactical strategy game that we remember it from '94, but it was going to be a first-person shooter, and so then we ended up with Enemy Within and Enemy Unknown.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was threat of it being a first-person shooter, wasn't there? And they still kind of pushed through and eventually created the Bureau for the reboot. And there's been numerous tries before where, because Hasbro had the license for a while after Microprose had it. Yeah. Microprose, did 3 games where they were decent, and then they tried to branch off and do, some weird fucking space shooter thing, which nobody ever heard of.
It was really tacky to look at.
Hasbro got it and they tried to do a play-by-mail game.
Yeah, you can...
and then they did a third-person, shoot 'em up thing, which was just bonkers. Nothing like XCOM.
No.
Completely destroying what was great about the brand. And they basically were ignored by everybody. I mean, a couple of those XCOM games, I looked at them up, what the passage of XCOM was, and a couple of them I hadn't even heard of. The only ones I've ever paid any attention to are the tactical turn-based shooters, because that's what tactical turn-based strategy games.
Yes.
Because that's what the XCOM brand is all about. And what's great about XCOM is that, because you're micromanaging individual members of your team, you learn and they leveling up as well. You're leveling up almost like RPG style, getting them more skills, getting them up higher and higher ranks. You learn to love those team members, but then it's a game with permadeath, so you can lose them as well, and you really care about that, you know?
That is the biggest draw one of the biggest draws for me about the game, is having those units, leveling them up, giving them their own weapons, customizing them, and then taking them from one encounter to the next throughout the course of the entire game.
Yeah.
They mean something to you. They're yours. And even if they do die, you know, you kind of remember them, their heroic deaths, or you remember them for panicking, fleeing, shooting their own teammates, and eventually being put down by a stray grenade.
Yeah.
You know, so you'll remember the stories of each of your characters.
Yeah. It's if you can imagine like an elaborate game of chess where no longer are the chess pieces, you know, like just faceless pawns and pieces that you no longer care about. You know,
they have names.
They have names. They have characters. You can create them and customize them how you want. You put love and care into each of your chess pieces.
Yes.
And then when they are taken by the opponents, you're like, no! God damn you! No! Why? So yeah, it's chess with emotions. It's great.
So I was a big fan of XCOM on the Xbox 360. That's where I played it the most. It was a lot of fun to play. What's different from the Xbox 360 version, or the XCOM that came out a few years back, to this one?
The original reboot. Okay, so like as soon as Firaxis got hold of it, they decided, we're gonna like be true to the XCOM brand, and they went back to what was great about XCOM. But they tried to basically kind of reboot it with some differences, you know, and like not all of those differences worked. So they had a kind of dynamic in there where previously you used to like explore around the map and you would uncover aliens, and those aliens would be having like kind of like a proper turn
whilst you're still having your go. That was the biggest grievance I had with the game.
So the reboot, it wasn't like that. You just had like little groups of aliens, which were what became known among the community as pods of aliens, and they weren't really having proper turns. They were just sort of teleporting around the maps whilst you weren't looking. And then what would happen is like you would sort of get into visual range of these pods, and then they would have this thing where they would scatter around, and they would like have a free turn even though it was your turn, and then you would have to like kind of systematically try and figure out how to get around these pods. And then there was the way they rebooted it as well. They kind of they kept a lot of the kind of the progression paths that were available for the technology. They were very similar to the original XCOM, but they shaved and simplified a lot of other things down. So there was a whole section of the original XCOM where you had like a managing the bases which were around the globe. Yeah. And that was like half of the game really, was where you positioned your your XCOM bases, how you then sort of got your coverage across the map to detect UFOs that were flying across the map, and then how you defended those bases as well, because those bases could be attacked by UFOs and taken out. So they sort of cut all that section out and and simplified some of the mechanics, but not all of those entirely worked. Like they weren't exactly. They sort of slightly oversimplified the like grander management of the defending the invasion. But all the graphics were much nicer. The kind of like the animations were much more beautiful. You know, they were really nice. So in many ways, they'd given the reboot great justice. But there was just some things that like didn't quite make sense, and they hadn't really improved on the formula, only just slightly simplified it. So it was a great XCOM, but it was lacking in some areas. And
the areas that I can think of right now for me were the repetitive maps. The amount of times you would go to Tokyo, and then you'd go to Los Angeles, and you'd go to London and fight outside the same corner shop, on the same stretch of road, next to the same cars, in every city you went to. There wasn't much variation, and of course there was the game was criticized for not having the base defense mode. You know, your base was never under siege at any point. It was just a case of shooting down UFOs and having, taking the fight to the aliens each time.
That is exactly right. So you were missing like that entire section of really kind of managing the base and really like having to defend those bases, because you would also be able to defend them from UFOs incoming. You would have like missiles and various different kinds of base defense. Sometimes you could destroy a UFO before it would even get to your base and land, but then sometimes they would have a UFO that was too big for your defenses, and you would land, it would land, and then you'd have to defend your base as well. I mean, it was. I'm not complaining too much about it, because then they brought out the expansion called Enemy Within.
Yeah.
And what they did was then like a single set piece in there in Enemy Within, which gave you one opportunity to have a base defense, because your base, you only had the one base XCOM headquarters in the
console or the reboot version.
In the reboot, in the reboot console and PC version.
Yeah.
Like so you only had the one base, and then they with the expansion you had the one opportunity to defend that, because it would come under attack once as like a set piece mission. And then they added also like loads of other little extras, like they added a new kind of trooper called the mech trooper. And they added like more variation in some of the tech. So the expansion was quite cool, really, and it became a more complete reboot with the expansion.
But the one thing that the console owners of that game didn't really get to experience, which the PC gamers did, and that was a homemade mod for the game, right?
Yeah, and so this is the thing. There was what PC guys got to enjoy eventually is because it wasn't designed to mod the original reboot, the original XCOM Enemy Unknown, the XCOM Enemy Unknown reboot, but modders finally sort of cracked it, broke it down, and created something called the Long War mod. And in that's where they really started to get creative with different kinds of grenades, different kinds of ammunition, a slightly different armor dynamic, which was cooler. Like they started to expand on the amount of things you had to do in the game to give it more longevity.
But why would you want to take, a 40-hour campaign sort of experience and turn it into a 120, 140-hour playthrough campaign? Why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself?
Because it's more XCOM, Gary. More XCOM.
Exactly. Now, how rare is it for you to want to, quadruple the amount of time you're going to play through a campaign?
Yeah, I mean that's a testament to how great it is, this experience of just being able to like beat back the invasion. And for people who found that like the campaign was too short, I have to say I got Long War going on my computer, but I didn't play through the whole campaign because I quite liked the sort of 60 to 80 hours that it took you to do the campaign. And with the Enemy Within, I was fairly happy with it. But there were a few foibles about the way things worked, and like some things didn't quite make sense in terms of like the logic with how they functioned. But there was enough added to the. If you then had the Enemy Within and the Long War expansion, there was a lot there, and so I played through that and I really enjoyed it. I just wasn't prepared after I'd already completed Enemy Within on Iron Man Impossible. Didn't want to do a 200-hour campaign. But for Firaxis, all credit to them, they love the Long War mod too. And what they've pretty much done for XCOM 2, because this is what it's all about now, and is fixed all the little foibles, all the things that sort of didn't make any sense. They've gone back to the base management thing and completely restructured it so that you've actually got a grander strategy to have to employ out now as well. And what they've done now is, instead of you defeating an invasion, instead of copying the same thing, they've rolled the narrative of XCOM on 20 years from when they created the reboot. And what they've done is they've, instead of defeating an invasion, the invaders invaded, and they were successful.
Narratively, that's a really interesting point, because most people have played through the game and defeated the aliens at least once.
Yeah.
But how many times did they fail?
That's exactly right.
And so this is XCOM 2 is in all of those universes in which you had a failed run at XCOM.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, and at the same time kind of interesting from a narrative point of view, and also it would also kind of make sense, because on the victorious completion that you have of the game, there's not really much left for the aliens to do. Unless, you look at Independence Day, where they come back with an even greater number and yada yada. Yeah. So it's interesting to say, the aliens came, they kicked our asses, and now we're kind of a slave society to them, kind of. Yeah,
they become a dominating, invading force, and that's what's really clever about this one, is that they become the dominating force. They have all these kind of there was, in the expansion, they had Advent. They were called, they were basically alien fanboys, who wanted to kind of do deals with the aliens, and they're like, they're gonna be our heroes. So now that Advent force is like the kind of military,
the grunt
front
for the aliens.
The military grunt frontman for the aliens. And the aliens came over, became like a dominating force, created these grand super cities, which they've encouraged everybody into, and start pumping out loads of propaganda about, how the world's a better place now, thanks to the peace between humans and the aliens. And the characters from XCOM carry over into this as part of the resistance, really, and you're making up a kind of guerrilla resistance force. And now, instead of just going to the main globe and just passing time on the main globe to get the next event to come up, which was a kind of, one of the complaints for the reboot, now you've actually got to branch out across the globe to make contact with other resistance fighters in different areas of different continents. And in doing so, you expand the numbers of the resistance, so you expand your income as well. And your base, you still got a very similar kind of process of base management, where you're just really kind of managing a single base, but that base is now on a big flying machine. Think the
helicarriers from Marvel, or
think the helicarrier from Marvel, that big one where they've got that big flying base, which is very similar to that, to be honest. So you're rocking around on that and going from place to place to place, trying to make contact with other resistance fighters. And
but it's it's
building up a radiocom network.
It's totally different from just making sure the panic areas in all the countries stays under minimum. It seems more involved this way, having to literally go to each of those countries and meet up with those. And as we've seen, there's a lot more cutscenes in this game than there were in the last one, outside of the base as well.
Well, what you're also doing is you've picked up a piece of intel that the aliens are trying to complete a project called the Avatar Project. You have no idea what it is. All you know is that the rumors is that it could mean the end of humanity, and you don't know why, you don't know how. You got no. All you got to do is try and pick up threads and clues as to why that is. So what you can do is sort of spend your time around, and you're going against the time for this Avatar project to be completed. You got to try and find facilities and try and blow them up, essentially, to try and push back the timer on the Avatar project. And you've got to try and find out exactly what's going on with the Avatar project, as well as spend time in various different places to get the resources you need to continue the fight and beat the aliens back. So you've got many things to do, and you have to make the tactical choices about what to prioritize to be able to make it through, bearing in mind you're always against the clock with this. So I'm just going to evac John here.
So with the previous XCOM, there wasn't very many. There wasn't the mission variety was pretty much the same. It was a case of there's a terror attack, go here, kill all the aliens, rescue the civilians.
Yeah.
Oh, now you need to go here and get to this point and activate it before the timer runs down.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got to attack a crashed UFO. Mm-hmm. That was essentially it. Yeah. What's the mission variety type in XCOM 2?
Well, you will see pretty much all those, because there were quite a lot of different mission types. There was a bit more than that. You'd have to evac VIPs. They would have some, especially in the expansions, they had some story missions, things like that, where you would try and again gain intel. Where there was this one guy who was Chang, I think his name was, or something. He was Shen. I think it was named Shane.
Right.
You know, like you had to like get this guy out because he had important information about how to defeat the aliens and things like that. So you've got like various different missions, like you're evacuating people, trying to save civilians, hacking workstations to gain intelligence, and like trying to stop bombs going off. There's missions where your ship will come under attack from a UFO, and they'll try and bring your thing down with this kind of EMP device, which means forces you to land, and you have to go and destroy the EMP device to defend your flying base type thing. And
right.
so there's kind of all the main mission types are there, but they all hinge together in a way that makes a lot more sense. You've got more mission types as well, things like you've got to go in, hit bases and blow them up, plant explosives, get in, get out. There's a whole new dynamic to this where they've made the way you move through the map make a lot more sense. They have this thing called concealment now when you're in the tactical stage,
right?
Which means you can kind of like some maps you will have concealment from the beginning, so you're going in with stealth, and that will allow you to kind of scout around the map and be able to figure out where things are, because the enemies aren't aware that you're around, they're not on alert. So as long as you stay hidden and in cover, you can kind of like negotiate your way around the map. And like all these things come together in a way that makes much more logical sense for the narrative and for the strategy, rather than just like, oh, here's a random mission there, choose your random mission type if you've got more than one to have to choose from.
Right.
So, and in XCOM 2, the narrative is like everything's had a bit of a polish up and a redesign, but the narrative drives you through.
I was going to say, is the narrative in this game strong enough to keep you invested in your characters?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because the story in the previous XCOM was pretty much a case of the story was really only advanced by gaining new technology and upgrading your soldiers and watching them evolve into one of them becoming the killing machine for the end game.
Yeah.
But there was, there wasn't too much story other than, what they added for DLC. Mm-hmm. But it's already in this game, we're already seeing lots of cutscenes, lots of characters, and it feels very cinematic.
Yeah. So I've just clicked through the tutorial essentially, this is the tutorial, it's a set piece the same every time.
Yeah.
And it will be the same map every time. And you get introduced to this guy who looks a bit like Sam Fisher. That is actually, I forget his last name now, but it's John something. He's the guy that's like, incoming commander. He's like the clean-shaven, nice-faced, kind of guy that helps you back out at command.
Yeah. And
is always the one sort of talking to you, telling you what's going on, feeding you the information. So now you've got a different scientist guy. You've got the daughter of Dr. Shen is your engineer. Or Lieutenant Commander Shen, or not Commander, I forget their fucking titles. But yeah, so you've got you've got follow-ons from the characters, and he's become a fucking grizzled badass after being trying to lead
20 years
resistance.
in the war so far.
Yeah, and as you can see, I just played through the tutorial in which we rescued this person that's been in a pod, right, for ages, and they extracted something from my brain, and that was me. I'm the commander, or you, that is you. They just saved you. The resistance just saved you. They got you back.
I couldn't help but get a Command and Conquer feeling from the fact that they have to rescue the commander, which is the player currently playing.
Absolutely.
It was very well handled.
Yeah. And so there's this is the new scientist guy, he'll talk to you. He's been in the same position. You can see scars in the back of his head where he's had implants in the back of his head removed.
Right.
And but the tutorial mission is the same every time. But one of the things that's also different about XCOM 2, that, like you say, the complaints the maps were very frequently just the same. Once you knew the map and the layout, you could kind of go, I can go here, and as long as there's not a pod here, I've got a tactical advantage there. and then you would get the same missions in a campaign. You
that's
get
what
bored of
killed
the
the multiplayer for me, was that eventually you get one person who knows the map so well, he has his units in the right places within 1 or 2 turns, and he just eviscerates you.
Yeah. Now, that is no longer a factor. They've gone back to the process of proper procedural generated levels. So every time you go in there, there's like each one has a theme, you know, like you might be in the city, or you might be in snowy tundra, or you might be in, you know, the forest, or there might be a UFO that's been disabled and you've got to go in and take the UFO down, so there's still a UFO, like, very similar structure in the center.
Yeah.
But never will you come across the same map until you've got past once you've got past the tutorials.
That is fantastic. That is something that makes every single playthrough sort of unique. Because I guess the environments all stay the same, but the actual layout will be different each time, so you have to strategize each time. I have to ask, has that ever posed a problem where the game has created a map for you that is, well, excuse my language, a fuck you map design, where it sticks you somewhere and the terrain and the alien emplacement is in such a ridiculous fashion that the game has made the difficulty twice as hard just because of its random map generator? Has it been fair the whole time?
I've got to say, there were moments in the other ones, because like although you'd be on the same map, the placements of the aliens in the old game would be random.
Yes.
And there were more fuck you moments in the previous game, I think. Like, because you could come into the map and you'd be like, oh yeah, I know this map, I'll just go over to here. Your first move of your character, and you'd uncover 3 pods of aliens, and you'd have way too many that you could fucking deal with, you know? Like, every once in a while, you would have those aliens spawn right on you from, like, where you were starting.
Yeah.
And the second you did anything of any distance, there's no way you could have got to cover without uncovering more aliens than you could deal with. I haven't had that. I mean, I have heard of people complaining, because sometimes you'll have a mission where you've got to get to a place and you've got to defend it.
And you have time to get there.
There are ones where you've got a timer to get there, and sometimes it'll be very difficult, like the number of aliens between you and the location you got to get to. You can see you've got 8-9 turns to get there.
Yeah.
But I've heard of people saying, because sometimes you've got to get to a point and stop the aliens destroying something.
Okay.
And the same with the missions where you've got to save civilians as well.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you've got to save a certain number of civilians at those moments, because it's not just like a terror mission where they're just wiping out civilians and if they all die it doesn't matter. They're trying to attack resistance bases, and they're killing civilians and resistance fighters, and so you've got to save at least a certain number on the map.
Right.
Otherwise you're losing your resistance fighters and it's a failure. So if all of those characters are right next to aliens, then and you're miles away from them, from getting to be able to save them, it can be very difficult. Or if you're miles away from the thing you've got to save and the aliens are right next to it, however they get that off by, they'll only ever kill one civilian per turn, no matter how many pods are on the map, and they'll only ever take one shot at the thing that you're trying to defend as well.
Okay.
So yeah, even though that, like, some maps are harder than others because the positions are more convenient for the aliens than for you, they still seem to have thought of that as well and got that right. You know? So I have not had a moment in this where I've thought this is an absolute fuck you moment.
Well, before we close out, Geoff, would you like to give your recommendation for XCOM 2? Can you rate it any higher than the highest?
Well, all I can say is that in the genre, and perhaps for most games, I do particularly like this genre, so you can consider that this will cover for most games. This is my favourite game of the genre. The previous XCOM was my favourite, and XCOM 2 has surpassed my hopes and expectations in every way. and it is now my new favourite of the genre and one of my new favourite games ever. So there you go. If you hate turn-based strategy games, I don't know if XCOM 2 might even turn you towards turn-based strategy games. I don't know. It might be that good. Yeah. If you've never tried them before, XCOM 2 is absolutely the one to try. It is absolutely brilliant.
I can say that I did not play the original XCOM games on PC. I became aware of them too late into sort of the PC sort of life cycle. I'd already jumped onto the Command & Conquers at that point. So I regret never being able to play the XCOMs. I played the console one, the reboot that came out on multi-platform, and I loved it. I Iron Manned it. I did near top difficulty, not max difficulty. And I played it multiple times from all the different starting locations. Had a blast with it. Still get the inclination to go back and play it again, considering XCOM 2 is not on consoles.
Iron Man Impossible, that shit.
Iron Man Impossible is the game is so good you wish to be able to do it on that difficulty, because the challenge is rewarding because the game is so damn good, as you have just said. I highly recommend the game. I have not yet got my hands on it, but I'm also addicted to watching it. I watch you playing it, Geoff. I'm watching Twitch streams of people playing it. It's fascinating to watch people's go through the emotions with their characters, to get invested in the strategy. It's great for backseat gamers as well, because you can get invested just watching. I mean, some missions can take hours and hours, but it depends whether you want to save and load each time you make a move, or whether you just want to gamble and go all the way permadeaths be damned. It's a great game. It's definitely probably going to be one of the best games, or on the list for 2016 as one of the best games of the year, without a doubt.
I really do. But I definitely think so. And I hope it comes to console for everybody. I'm sure Firaxis did bring it to the other one to console, and I think they'd be crazy not to. I do think that they did it the right way round, because often it's very easy to go, right, I'm going to make a game which works really well on two unique systems, and then be slack about making it work
port
on
or the transfer,
making it work for PC, which has many systems to make it work for. But if they make it work for many systems, it's much easier to streamline it for
because I don't mind if they have if the Xbox or the PlayStation has to take a graphical hit in order to be able to run the game as smooth as it does and be able to actually just play the game. I don't see why they shouldn't, and there's definitely an audience for these sort of games on console. There still is.
And this is one of the games where it wouldn't really matter if it was 30 frames a second.
It would not, no.
It's a turn-based thing, so it's not like, you're Twitch shooting, like it's not like a first-person shooter where the number of frames actually gives you an advantage or makes the gameplay more fluid. This is something that can be that sort of cinematic 30 FPS. And it will still be fine, and it can keep the extra look and polish, just so you got the nicer cinematics and that. I hope they do, and I'm sure. I've got a good feeling they will eventually.
Well, I'm hoping they do. I really am, because I want to get my hands on this game too. Okay, I just want to say also thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for listening. We'll be back next Friday with another video game. In the meantime, film reviews are up on Thursdays. You can check in with Ian tomorrow. Still playing Shell Shock Nam 67, and he has a special guest. Jason Bighead will be joining him for the next sequential part. So come back tomorrow and listen to what Ian's got to say about Nam. Of course, you can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and Patreon. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Take it easy.